Okay, guys, for today, we're going to be going into Francis Ngannou's basically interview with Ariel Helwani. Now, before I go into the interview itself and share with you what I thought about the interview itself, it was just a very interesting interview, so to speak. I thought it was quite frustrating to hear Francis Ngannou almost answer every single question with a question instead of the attitude that he had on there. Now, I know I've done a video before stating that I wasn't a big fan of Francis Ngannou, and that I didn't think that he had the right um, understanding of like the whole MMA community and stuff like that, and what the fans felt. Now, I might be on the fringe, but I do not. I'm still not a big fan of Francis Ngannou, and I kind of want to go over some of the stuff in this interview that I think that he's lacking awareness of, and where I believe that he is, so to speak, just misunderstanding his marketability and basically how business is done essentially. Now, with that being said, he did just get released, or he just parted ways with the PFL, and he's actually going to hit on that in a little bit as well, right at the beginning of the interview. Now, what's interesting as well, on top of that, Ariel Helwani actually did a in-person interview on his channel. I'm trying to look for it right now as I speak, but he did an in-person interview with the PFL owner, so to speak. I think it's John Martin, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just see if I could find it real quick. Trying to see if I can find it off the thumbnail. Yeah, it's John Martin. So yeah, John Martin had a couple interesting things to say. Now, I wanted to do a video on this one, obviously, and then also do a video on one more person as well, which I thought was MVP. Man, I was in Bellator. I was an MVP fan, and I just thought on this particular weekend that he just did really in this UFC stint so far. He hasn't really done really well. Now, going into the Francis Ngannou interview, let's go ahead and get started with this. I'm gonna actually play it a little bit ahead and fast pace it a little bit, just so we don't get stuck with this for forever, so to speak. But I do want to point out a couple things that he shares and the way he just responds to Ariel Helwani. Now, for my take on Ariel Helwani, I'm not a massive fan of Ariel Helwani, if I'm being completely honest. But in this interview, I thought he was being pretty fair, in my opinion. And it felt like Francis Ngannou was almost building tension between the two of them and being a little bit almost combative, if that makes sense. Now, maybe the competitiveness is coming from the lack of fights that he's been having in terms of boxing matches or MMA matches in that sense. And yes, I do get his perspective on some of those questions where he felt like he had already answered the question and Ariel Helwani was still asking the same question, so to speak, and he had already expressed how he felt. But just his attitude in general, his whole demeanor in general, like I said, not a big fan. So let's get into it.
Kind enough to join us. Hey, Francis, how are you, my friend?
Good, and you are.
It's always great to have you on. It's always great to talk to you, and we have a lot to discuss this particular time, Francis. A lot going on.
I think it's been a while, yeah. So yeah.
Yes. So let's get into it. And your connection, you look crystal clear. You look amazing on the screen. What have you changed? What's different?
Nothing.
Okay.
Usual. I think maybe you upgrade your screen.
It's us. It's us. Okay, it's us. No problem. We're moving up.
You have a better one now.
We're moving up. We're Netflix now, Francis. Good. We're Netflix.
Congratulations.
And congratulations to you. I'd love to start at the beginning, though. Can you tell us, Francis, why you parted ways with the PFL? What led to that decision when we found out on that Friday morning, you going in your separate way?
Well, I didn't part way. I think I have one fight left, and I was hoping to have that fight since last year. I've been asking for the fight, but they keep telling me they are working on it. And until last January, they said they couldn't make it on time. So that's what happened. But I wanted to fight. I've been asking for a fight for almost a year now.
Did they give you a reason at any point as to why they weren't booking this fight?
Well, they kept saying that they were working on it. And at the same time, a lot of things was changing in the PFL. And sometimes it was so even hard to know, because I used to talk fight related. It used to be with Pete Murray. And then things started to change. And then John came around, and you have to the conversation has to basically start all over. He has to pick up on things. So kind of slow the process down.
Do you think that any part of the reason was due to money, that they didn't want to pay you what you were owed?
Well, the contract was there. It's the same contract that we have long time ago. So there wasn't a negotiation or something. The contract, it was the existing contract that I was going to fight in.
The reason I asked that is maybe the new regime, the new.
So just real quick going into it. So what's funny about that is that when Ariel Helwani asked earlier in the interview with John Martin about the whole separation between Francis Ngannou and the PFL, he had suggested basically that he didn't want to talk about it. He didn't have anything to say on it, and he didn't really want to talk about it. And we're going to learn something very, very interesting that's going to come up, because Ariel also mentioned how MVP essentially was, you know, his announcement to leave the PFL or part ways with the PFL was essentially days after he was announced to fight on the MVP card. And so that's going to be a very interesting, something to listen to as well.
Bosses, the likes of John Martin said, you know what, we didn't sign this deal. We don't like this deal. So we're just going to try to end it or not give you a fight.
Well, then they are the only one to, they are in a much better position to answer that question clearly.
That's fine. Yeah, and I get that. I'm wondering, was there an end to the contract? Is that why they made the decision? They had to give you the fight before this date or month kicked in.
There was the end in the contract.
A sunset clause, basically.
No, not a sunset clause. There was the end in the contract.
And was that coming up?
And then, he was coming up.
Okay.
He was coming up. I mean, of course, I did give a lot of time since I was also. I mean, they requested a lot of time for the contract, and then for me, it was also good. Like I was also expecting, like I could have some boxing fight at some point, so things doesn't mix up. So they have time in case I have some boxing fight, so they have time to readjust. So yeah, but he was coming up.
Were you disappointed that it ended the way in which it did?
Disappointed. I think disappointed is a big word, but I would say I had liked to get to the end of that contract.
Yeah. And
I didn't want it to. Let's say I didn't want it to end up that way. Basically after the relationship that I had with the PFL, we had a good relationship from the beginning all the way along. So I wanted it to finish in the better way.
Do you regret?
And I would have even be open like to a new contract if that was the option on the table, but.
Yeah, so when he says, I was open to a new contract on the table if that was on the table, it almost sounds like he's suggesting that he would have taken a little bit less money, in my opinion. This is just my perspective from what he's sharing here, is that he would possibly take less money just to get his second fight in. Now, I don't think that's the case, because then he clarifies afterwards that, if he were to have that last fight and then have the new contract, that would have made a lot of sense for him. So I kind of giving you spoilers right before, but I want to go into it because this part about John Martin and him knowing about him parting ways with the PFL is going to come very soon.
That was never discussed? You guys never went?
No, it was never discussed because we need to finish this first. There was a contract on the table that hasn't been executed.
Were there ever even talks like, oh, potentially this guy on this date? Like, did it ever even get off the ground for this final fight, or never?
I find him a little biased, if he's talking about contract and saying it hasn't been executed. He clearly didn't want to execute his contract with the UFC. I find it a little bit hypocritical, if I'm being honest, but yeah.
On date, no. I know after
Nemkov
fought, yes, and then they said he could be him sometime, but didn't mention the date.
Do you regret signing with them in 2023?
No, absolutely no. I think it was a good thing. It was a best decision. I mean, I didn't have a pressure on the contract. I had my freedom, which I always claim. And then to the end, I didn't have. Yeah, we didn't come to a full term of a contract, but I didn't have to fight off the contract or something like that. Didn't have to deal with all this nightmare.
So, if you run a business and you're trying to have someone that you just signed, let's say in the fight organization, and you basically say, if you can sell more, we can give you and more, right? This is what Dana White talks about when he says, try and starting the fight business and see if you can figure it out, because in my opinion, when Francis Ngannou is suggesting that it wasn't a bad collaboration him and the PFL did, it wasn't bad for him. For him, it was good. It was very good for him. It was very lucrative for him. It was appropriate for him because he made a lot of money in that first fight that he fought. And that was, I think, back in 2024, if I'm not mistaken. And he had that one fight. Then the second fight he didn't have. And now he wants them to honor the contract because they know they can't pay him. He knows they can't pay him. But they signed on for that and had other expectations that weren't fulfilled. So it's just kind of interesting that he's seeing it from his perspective, and I can see for himself where that makes sense. And even though I haven't been much of a fan of his, I liked where he said in his one of his post fight press conference or post press conference for the MVP one that they just did recently. He was talking to one of the reporters and suggesting that fuck my legacy, give me my pay. I thought he was really cool there when he said it, and I liked the way he said that notion. I thought it made sense. But now it doesn't make sense because if you're saying, just pay me and I'm not going to do anything for you. I mean, Francis Ngannou, in my opinion, apart from him being a big badass and one of the craziest heavyweights in the world, and attractive in the sense of his fight and the way he can knock people out and his fighting ability, he's not very marketable. And I don't think he understands what marketing is. I don't think he understands what business is at all. And that's not any shade on him. That's just sometimes it's not in your lane, whatever the case is. But you don't have the right, in my opinion, to criticize other entrepreneurs or business owners who you work for when you clearly don't understand what they're doing. Because obviously, if you did, wouldn't he be in their place? So I don't know. I think of it like that. I'm saying this from coming from the perspective as a business owner, so I could probably be a little bit biased. But I've had times where I've wanted people who worked with me to be on the level that I was thinking at. And I realized shortly later that they were not on that level. And it was just, and it's not like a shade on them. It's just, they didn't have the capacity to think the way I was thinking about the business, to see the full picture. And I think that's what he lacks, is seeing the full picture in this entire thing. I think the only picture he sees is his own picture, which is about himself, his freedom, and all his I think he's pretty selfish, if I'm being honest with you. But it's interesting to see how this is gonna. It's gonna be interesting to see how this is gonna basically age once everything is done, and once we see him after his career. It almost sounded at one point in the interview like he's okay with not fighting anymore, if that were the case. If I obviously I'm a fan of Francis in terms of his fighting, right? I can't deny that. If I were to say that I wasn't, I'd be lying to you and myself. So I am a fan of his fighting, right? Watching him fight. I watched the PFL fight. I didn't buy the pay-per-view, but I definitely watched it and saw it afterwards. And I just don't see the attractiveness with having him as a fighter. Apart from the fact that he can fight really, really well. But like, let's just be completely honest with each other. Philipe Lins, the person who he's fighting for the MVP card. I mean, realistically, he's not really a matchup for him. He's a light heavyweight fighter fighting a heavyweight, Francis Ngannou, who goes over 300 pounds at times when he's not fighting. Like, that to me is just insane that they would match those two up, but that's all they had. That's the only people they could find, and the person that they could find to take that fight with Francis Ngannou. So yeah.
The announcement that you were parting ways, that you were leaving, was on a Friday, and then the announcement that you were joining the MVP MMA card on Netflix on May 16th was on a Monday, and then we saw you at the press conference on Tuesday. Did they make that announcement, in your opinion, on the Friday to get ahead of that? Did they make the decision because tell us your perspective.
Yeah. Well, I think they wanted to get ahead of story, which is what every organization would do, because we get we part ways in January, and it was since January, and then I think I wanted to also give them a better way, like to come up with something, because that was their decision to part way, not mine. But
So he says that was their decision, not his. Well, if they're not making any money on you, then why the fuck would they keep you in the first place? Like, bro, obviously it was their decision because they're almost sinking ship at this point. They need to figure it out. You can really tell from sorry, I forgot his name again. You could just really tell from John Martin's interview earlier with Ariel. I thought he did really well, by the way, in the interview himself. But you can really tell that they're under the fire right now. That they know where they're at. They're realistic about it, but they also understand that they have to bring attractive fights to people. Now, on a marketing perspective, in terms of what PFL has done so far, after watching the last Friday's fight card, I think they actually did something really cool, and I'm gonna share that in a second. But I think they did something really, really awesome.
I was a little surprised when they sent me that. I'm like, they should have at least told me, since I've been fully done into this one. You know.
So he feels like he's entitled to know, and I don't blame him on that perspective. But at the same time, since he knew since January and they haven't announced it yet, I think it was just interesting that they haven't announced it yet. But I think they were just trying to get ahead of the game, obviously, like he said. But I find it interesting that he feels like he should have known that as well, and he found out through other people as well. Now, I'm gonna actually get into this point later.
Did you know that was coming out?
No, I didn't know.
So how did you feel about it when you saw it all?
Bro, at this point of time, I'm not here to like feel much about stuff. I just move on. I wasn't. Yeah. It wasn't anything that I found it very little weird that after all this time they didn't even come back to me and say, okay, we're gonna now announce it. It was people. They didn't even tell me. Like people just sent it to me. I just saw it out there.
Okay, so you mean you found it weird as, let's say for PFL Africa, you didn't show up for the first two events, bro, without any announcement? People were asking for you to be there. You were the one who came up with the whole, I'm going to be the ambassador for PFL Africa. Yet, they didn't tell you about announcement, and now you feel, it's weird. Like, come on, dude. Like, in the same breath, like, I know I'm arguing semantics here, but like at the same time, it doesn't make sense. Like, I think what's happening with Francis Ngannou, and honestly, in my opinion, I don't think he should have done this interview. I think what happens is it makes him look even worse than he is already in terms of his name in the community. I did see a lot of people like in the fan base on the live when I was watching it, his interview with or listening to his interview, watching his interview with Ariel Helwani. I saw a lot of people putting in the comments section like, Francis the GOAT, Francis the GOAT, Francis the GOAT. Philipe Lins is not a GOAT fight matchup. Like, I don't know how people think Francis Ngannou is a GOAT when he couldn't even fight, they couldn't even make that fight between John Jones and himself. I mean, if he was still in the UFC, it would have been sick, right? Like, if he was still in the UFC, fighting Tom Aspinall, fighting John Jones, fighting all these top fighters, WCA, Alex guy, Cyril Gone, then it would have been fun to see him. And like, obviously he doesn't care about that, but you don't show up to PFL Africa and you say, they should have gave you notice. Like, obviously they're busy. Like, obviously.
I wasn't aware at all.
Wow. But at that point, on that Friday, you had already agreed with the MVP to be on this card, right?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I've been talking with the MVP, with Nikisa, for like 2-3 weeks.
Okay. I spoke to John Martin, and he told me of PFL that you were a big part, obviously, of PFL Africa, and you're still involved, and he would like to talk to you about remaining involved. Is that accurate? Are you still involved, and would you like to still be involved in PFL Africa?
Well, I think I would still like to be involved. My goal with the PFL Africa was to bring the sport in the continent and to launch that, to give that opportunity to people in the continent. So, and then he was something very separated from my promotional agreement. So I think if there is a way to keep that on, I'll also be part of it, because at the end of the day, that's like for me is a personal project. I really want to see.
Yeah, so already he's saying for him it's a very personal project. Bro, how the fuck are you gonna benefit the company? Like, you weren't even happy with the first two events the way they threw it, and you were saying that basically they weren't promoting the African fighters because they don't have fucking name value. They're not marketable at the time. They need people at the top to be like noticeable names so people can get engaged and feel like the viewership is there. And then on top of that, then they can see and notice the fighters from Africa below the card, right? Like, just makes no sense to me, in my opinion.
I want to see that grow. I really want to see the continent have his own thing, like develop his fighters. To see all those fighters be enthusiastic about something locally, I think is quite amazing. And then I want to keep part of it. I think we just need to establish some conversation because the conversation here been like breach of tough. You know, when he was with Pete.
Yeah. He wanted to say breach of contract. Bro. What the fuck? What breach of contract? If anything, I think he feels a little bit salty and guilty and bitter. Not guilty, sorry. I think he feels a bit salty and bitter about the fact that they didn't give him that last fight or resign him. What value did he give to the PFL apart from doing boxing matches, right? When you listen to that interview with Ariel Helwani and John Martin says there was no basically pay-per-view buys when they put Francis Ngannou on there. And he says that basically the previous owners thought that was going to drive the pay-per-view up. So you're clearly not a pay-per-view star. You got on the Netflix card getting paid a flat rate because you're not a pay-per-view star. Now I understand people are going to argue, UFC doesn't have pay-per-view anymore either. Yes, that's true. I get that. But that also changes the entire structure of their pay as well. And my point is just basically, you are not driving viewership for people willing to pay to see you, basically. You're going to drive viewers on these interviews. You're going to drive viewers on the MVP card because it's on Netflix and people only have to pay a subscription for it. But people are not going to pay a one-time fee for $50 or $80 or $90, whatever it is, for the pay-per-view to watch you fight. And you didn't draw any of that for the PFL. You got knocked out with the Anthony Joshua fight. Even if you look at Dana White's press conference reaction to that, he was like, "Yeah, that's why I told you that it's not competitive. These cross fights. I mean, he's obviously really against cross fights when it comes to MMA fighters and boxers and stuff like that. And we all know if the boxer goes into the MMA fight, they're just gonna get taken down, right? So, yeah.
And Donn was easy to communicate, but now it's hard to even find who to communicate with.
Okay, so as far as PFL Africa, they haven't talked to you. You haven't had serious talks about you remaining involved or anything like that.
No.
Okay. Could you tell us? All right, so now speaking of MVP, how were you approached? When did that start? You said about 2 or 3 weeks prior to the announcement, so maybe about a month or so ago. Nikisa calls you and says, "We have this opportunity."
No, he asked me if I'm free first. I heard a rumor like this. I'm like, yeah, I'm good, but he wouldn't just trust what I was saying. So I put him with my lawyer, and then he gave him some context.
Nikisa wouldn't just trust what you're saying. I wonder why, Francis. Come on, bro. Like, again, don't get me wrong. I like Francis, okay? But the reality is that he doesn't see it the way, he doesn't see the bigger picture. He doesn't have the capability to see the bigger picture. And he says that he does, and he has different perspective and stuff like that. And he might be right about some things in certain aspects of it. But, yeah.
What I had heard, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit, and you did talk about it at the press conference, but we've gotten more information about it now, that the original plan was you versus Rico Verhoeven, correct?
Correct.
Did you like that?
Of course.
Great fight.
I mean, no disrespect for Philippe, but I was very excited about the Rico fight. And then when I heard that he has signed to fight Usyk, I was a little disappointed, to be honest.
So Rico said recently to Chael Sonnen and Ian Parker that he got offered more money to fight you than what he was being offered to fight Alexander Usyk, but he made a verbal agreement with Turkey. I heard that it's like multiple times more, that he was offered multiple times more to fight you, but he took the Usyk fight because he had already promised Turkey that he would do this. Originally, it was with AJ. Did you hear the same? And if so, and even if not, are you surprised that he turned down more money to fight you?
No, I don't know about the amounts. I don't know about numbers here, but I know that since maybe December or even before, he had a verbal agreement to fight in boxing, to fight potentially Usyk or AJ, somebody. So I knew that even when the kids approached me, he said, this is the thing. Rico really like this, that he's in this position. And he was always clear about it.
Okay.
So it wasn't a secret.
How do you think he's going to do against Usyk?
Well, I think he can do good. I have to watch to know exactly how it goes.
Okay, but you think he has a chance?
Yeah, of course. He's a legit fighter. Yeah, I think he definitely has a chance.
How do you feel about the fact that he's fighting for the WBC title, but when you fought Tyson, they wouldn't sanction it?
Well, I think at that time, so many people didn't believe on all this crossover. So I was like basically like the first to be in that position. But they did sanction it though.
They made a special belt, but not the real belt.
They make a special belt.
Yeah.
They did sanction it.
But this is for Usyk's belt.
Even after that, they ranked me.
Yep. I remember.
Yeah. So Ariel's basically clarifying that it's not for the actual, heavyweight champion belt, the actual belt itself. They did make a belt, but it's not for the actual belt itself. So Ariel's trying to clarify that point, and you can see Francis over here just talking over him basically. And yeah, we'll get into a little bit more.
Yeah. So they did sanction it. But I think a lot of people were so skeptical, didn't know where this was going and how it was going to be until they get there and saw that. I'm like, okay, we think this is legit, and then step in. So basically we opened the door, we opened the path to show that, okay, this is something that can happen. And now it's normal. But at times they were like, what is this? What the hell is this?
Yeah, when he did really well in that fight, I was actually pretty happy for him, because obviously being an MMA fan, you want your MMA fighters to do really well in the boxing arena, and so to speak. But with that being said, he's not wrong, right? He's saying that, I take the credit for basically opening people's eyes up to that particular possibility. Was Jake Paul not trying to do that though? Jake Paul kept saying he's going to fight this person, that person, and he fought Anthony Joshua. And yeah, he did it after Francis Ngannou, but he was already paving that path before Francis Ngannou. So I don't know why Francis is saying that, as if he's the one that earns the credit for it, and maybe he does. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't technically believe that's true. Also, theoretically, he did really well in a Tyson Fury fight, because I don't think Tyson really understood what Francis Ngannou brings to the ring, so to speak. When they already had tape on him, when Anthony Joshua had tape on him for 10 rounds or whatever it was, 10, 12 rounds, now he's able to see his tendencies, his behavior, and sort of his fight IQ, and he's able to game plan off of that. So I think it makes a little bit more sense to think of it like that, to see it was almost like an anomaly that he did really well against Tyson Fury, and against Anthony Joshua, he didn't do too well. I mean, we've seen Anthony Joshua get knocked out after that against Daniel Dubois. So who also fight Usyk as well. And I don't know why he partied the day before, but that's a whole other story.
When you found out that Rico was going to take that fight, and before you guys agreed on Philipe Lins, were there other heavyweight names discussed in between that were of interest to you?
On top of my head, no. He was on Friday, and then I tell them to bring me something on Monday, to sleep on it, so we get some rest, because I wasn't right away going to start to think of who I will fight. And honestly, like there wasn't so many. It's not like the option was so many out there. It's hard to find fighters that are free from promotional agreement at this level.
Were you aware of Philipe Lins? Did you know of him? Had you heard of him?
Briefly, really quick. I didn't know him that much. I didn't know like much about his career until they brought it up.
And obviously, you were with him in California a couple of weeks ago. What did you make of him? Any sort of vibe from him? You got to spend time with him at the shoot the next day after the press conference. What did you think of him?
What do I think of him?
Yeah. What kind of vibe did you get from him?
Well, what I saw, he's a great fighter. He's a good guy, and then he's very excited, happy to be there, and like I think he's mentally there. He's trying to push back.
Yeah.
Which I like that.
As far as your recent test,
I sense a bit of arrogance when he said that, but I think what he's getting at is that he doesn't think that Philipe Lins has a chance, and so obviously he's trying to push himself mentally to get that or have that.
In MMA, Renan Ferreira, Cyril Gane, etc., where would you put him? Do you think that he is a sneaky good fighter that people are underestimating? Do you think that he's a notch above, a notch below? Where would you put him?
Well, he's a good fighter. He's a well-rounded fighter. That I mean, the people judge like good fighter or not based on how they are known, or based on their maybe the promotion that they fight to, which is not how it works. Sometimes you get somebody in the gym, he's not even fighting in any of this promotion, and then you find like he's a very, very skilled guy, very good guy. And then Philipe Lins is actually like the guy that went to all those promotions. So
now, I don't think he's wrong here, but I think what's happening is that when you have the most eyeballs on you, like you do in the UFC, obviously the people who fight really well are going to get noticed, and people are going to become fans of theirs. Or you have a really cool personality, or you have really great performances. Like in my opinion, Sean O'Malley's personality is good on his podcast, but when it comes to the fight weeks and stuff like that, his personality doesn't really come out or shine really that well. But when you look at his performances prior to him winning the belt, he had some incredible performances where he would knock people out, and he knocked out Aljo for the belt. So his performances were like his popularity a lot at the very beginning, in my opinion, was based on his performances. Now, when it comes to Francis Ngannou talking about this stuff and, saying basically like, it depends on your name value and stuff like that. Bro, that is the fucking name of the game. About the more attention you have, the more value you have in society. I think Jake Paul even spoke about this recently, where he said attention is more valuable than money itself, and that's true because the more people that know you or know of you, the more money or opportunities you have to make money, right? So if you read Think and Grow Rich, he talks about that himself, right? If you read all these like books when it comes to money, whether it comes to any of this other kind of stuff, when it comes to money and stuff like that, they always say stuff like that. Think and Grow Rich specifically said in there, the amount that you can allocate for the amount that you can garner attention, you can basically earn more money based off of that. And now these people are like, these are prize fighters essentially, right? So as a prize fighter, if you have a bigger name, that means you're technically quite more talented. Now, obviously, there's, outliers in other people like that as well. But for the most part, you're a good fighter if you have a good name and people know your name.
He's legit. He's legit. Technically, he's legit. He doesn't have like, he doesn't come with one thing special, but he comes with everything on his arsenal.
So basically, he doesn't have like one special move or a special tactic in mixed martial arts, but he comes with everything in his arsenal.
We're hearing a lot of things about MVP MMA. Could you tell us, compared to what you were getting from PFL, how does this is a one-fight deal, right, with them? It's just this one fight on May 16th, correct?
Yeah, it's just a fight. It's just a fight bout agreement. There's not a promotional agreement.
Right. How does this purse compare to the one that you were getting from the PFL?
That doesn't matter. We're not here to compare purse.
Are you happy with it?
Of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't say yes. I'm happy for the opportunity as well. Remember, this is like the first MMA fight that's going to be on Netflix. So I was more excited about that. That was like a big decision factor.
Today, they announced the entire card. I know you've been training. I don't know if you've seen it, but from what you've seen, you saw it. Here it is, just in case.
Yeah.
What do you think of this first card here?
It's dark. It's dark. It's the biggest card so far. Unless they bring some magic, this is the biggest card of the year.
Yeah.
So far.
Even since we saw you, Nate and Mike being added, I know
exactly.
That's a huge.
It's a card that is going to be very difficult to match it.
Are you?
Just real quick. So this is what I was going to say about the PFL recently. So in the middleweight division, you have Costello van Steenis, who basically won against the other guy who's American, who's like really, really good in the PFL. Let me just look it up real quick. So if I go to Tapology, I look at Costello van Steenis. He won his fight against Johnny Eblen. So Costello van Steenis won his fight against Johnny Eblen. Johnny Eblen is fighting in this upcoming week Brian Battle, who's from the UFC, who's also well known. What I like about what the PFL is doing is that they're creating narratives, right? So, for example, with this card that Ariel Helwani just shared for the MVP card, there's no narrative, there's no storyline between, okay, if let's say Francis Ngannou or Philipe Lins wins this fight, where did they go next? And this is what Dana White was talking about in his previous press conference, that there's no storylines. He didn't say storylines, but it was basically what he was saying, is that there's no storylines in between who's fighting who next. There's no sort of trajectory of who's fighting who next. Now, if you look at that, you look at the PFL, what they're doing currently, who did they have to fight Francis Ngannou next? Let's say they give Francis Ngannou that guy who he mentioned, right? The heavyweight champion that they currently have. Let me look it up real quick. So PFL heavyweight heavyweight champion. Let's see who it is. Okay, so Vadim Nemkov, right? So if they were to have Francis Ngannou fight Vadim Nemkov, then who's next after that, right? So there's no really accurate storyline that they can create there. And he also said himself in the fight in the the interview earlier that he did with John Martin, with the interview that he did earlier with Ariel Helwani, he mentions in there as well. He goes, I really don't have like a good heavyweight roster yet, and you can see even in the UFC that they don't have a really good heavyweight roster yet. So he's putting all his cards out there. They don't have anyone for him to fight after that. Like if he beats Vadim Nemkov, which he most likely would probably, right? Then who's he going to fight after that? They have to get more fighters in the PFL in order for them to have that storyline that's drawn between. And I think this is where Francis Ngannou doesn't understand how things work or how to market, like and how to create storylines and how to do marketing, so to speak, and how to be a marketable fighter. First of all, you're a great fighter, obviously, right? He is, right? But at the same time, if they can't market you as a fighter, where the fuck are they going to take you, and why are they going to give you the 10 million, whatever it was, for your second fight that you apparently had, right? So this is I think the frustration that I have watching Francis Ngannou, come on this interview and then just kind of act like almost like a hotshot. And you'll see towards the end of the interview, once we get there, that he just very almost a little bit combative with Ariel Helwani, and because Ariel Helwani is asking him certain questions, and I think he doesn't like those questions, and so instead of answering the question itself, he's kind of going back to Ariel Helwani saying he's giving him a question back, basically answering the question with a question itself.
Familiar with Saladin Parnasse from France?
Yeah, I know him. I met with him. His manager reached out to me once. When he wanted to start boxing, he wanted to do some boxing event in France, and they will have like some challenge, some difficulty. And then he reached out. We meet up, trying to see if I could help.
When the announcement came out that you were leaving the PFL, and I know you talked about this a little bit, but we haven't talked about it. Everyone had a say on the decision to leave the UFC, the legacy, all that stuff. And I felt, Francis, when I saw you on that Tuesday at the press conference, I felt a different type of energy around you. Like I felt like, and even in the interviews with people afterwards, like there was like an intensity to you. Like you were out to prove people wrong. I know you don't listen to what people say and you don't put stock into it and all this stuff, but I felt some sort of like edge to you. Do you know what I'm saying? Is that a fair way to describe how you're feeling right now?
No, you know, I mean, I don't feel like I have to prove anything to anybody, you know, so I won't have edge with that. As I said, I just do what I have to do, and then I get I get my peace of mind. I live with in my little bubble, and it's been working pretty good. You know, like right now, even going out there, start to do interviews, stuff like that. It's not my stuff. I just want to live my life. It's been good. You know, the decision. You mean which decision? It's the best decision of my life. You know, and also, in case those people don't know, is a part of a legacy because I have done something that nobody have done before. Nobody could have get in the position that I am right now.
Okay, first of all, I understand where he's coming from because on a personal level, it makes sense, right? For him, you know, the decision he made, you know, to leave, having that chip on his shoulder, like he feels like he doesn't owe anyone anything, and I get that. But when you are in a spotlight like this, right? When you are on these like big UFC fight cards, you're fighting against, you know, Stipe Miocic, who's like considered was considered basically one of the biggest, or even still considered one of the best heavyweights in UFC history. And you fight him and you win against him after you lost against him. And then, you know, like I said earlier, it goes back to my same thing what I said before, which is like the intention garners the value of him as a person, right? That means more value in terms of monetary value, right? So that's where I think he could get more sponsorships and stuff like that, which they talk about. He talks about John Martin, Ariel Helwani, and John Martin talk about afterwards as well. It's just there's a bunch of like elements to this whole fight game that I don't think Francis Ngannou is really understanding at this point, and it kind of shows in this interview that he doesn't really get that. And if you go look at my previous take on him and my previous video where I talk about him back in November and stuff like that, doing the interview with Ariel Helwani, like I'm not trying to badmouth, obviously, or throw shade to Francis Ngannou. If I were to meet him in person, I'd obviously probably fanboy a little bit. But my point is that he just doesn't seem to understand the marketability, the attention part, and then I think what he really wants is he wants to make a couple more big paydays. If I'm being completely transparent, I think he wants to make a couple more big paydays and leave. And I think he feels like he's done enough, and he says it in the interview he's done enough as well. And I don't blame him for any of that. But I don't know. Only time will tell if he fumbled the bag, and maybe he didn't fumble the bag for himself. But in terms of having that sort of like attention, I think he's kind of like stumbled. And this interview, in my opinion, doesn't really make him any greater or any more of a. I don't think it makes more fighters or fans, sorry, a fan of his, so to speak.
Cool. So I opened that door and I did it my own way. I was the first. So, I mean, what do you want me to prove? If that's not enough proof. And then I went out there being the first to take out two of the best boxers in the moment. And now I'm the first in the opening the MMA event on Netflix. What do you want me to explain, brother? If somebody doesn't understand, then he needs no explanation.
What was interesting to me was seeing people, managers, people in the business, talk about like, you see, it was a mistake. And I was thinking 2 boxing matches, an MMA fight, now the Netflix fight. So this is 4 fights since leaving the UFC. And I would imagine, I don't know how much you make, but just from what I hear, like this amount of money is probably more than your whole entire MMA career prior to that. So what are we basing it off of? How could it be a mistake? I don't understand how people are doing this.
Okay, now you can just, D1 Glazer, bro, Ariel. People are leaving comments, right? So in the comment section, people are leaving stuff like Francis has a bipolar career. One moment it looks like he fumbled. The next moment he's on top of the world. Yeah, I think the right question to ask, like one of these people said, is not that Francis make the mistake, but I think the PFL made the mistake, right? Or regret basically having him. The way he asked that question earlier. One person wrote, Francis went to good, to bad, to good, to bad, to good guy, roller coaster by fans. Yeah. They also bring up people, Francis Ngannou murdered a lady, a woman, you know, who was driving a motorcycle. That's kind of sad, though. I know his son went away as well, so can't really say much about that. I mean, even in this interview, he's gonna like basically defend John Jones as well, and I don't think someone wrote, Francis is the biggest joke in MMA. No one cares what he thinks or has to say. One person wrote, every time I listen to Francis Ngannou's interviews, I lose 15 brain cells. Yeah, this is kind of interesting to see. So, like, it kind of shows you his character in real time, which you'll see towards the end of the interview. But some guy wrote, basically Francis Ngannou giving Ariel some shit at the end when Ariel's been backing his this whole time. Maybe to stick it to Dana, but he's been backing him the whole time, basically saying that Ariel has been on his side the entire time since he left the UFC, and yet he's still giving Ariel some shit as well. Yeah, basically someone also said the same thing that I made, the point I made earlier. They obviously didn't want to, the PFL meeting, didn't want to be paying him $1 million plus to fight a relative no name and make a loss on the show. They could pay every fighter on the card with his fee alone, which is not a bad take, Yeah. This other guy said, since MMA promotions don't cross promote, how is Francis Ngannou still a lineal champ? I think because he left, and yeah. Some people think that it's a fake what they're calling him the lineal champ. So okay, someone wrote big dreams, small wallet. RC wrote, this dude is fake as fuck. Whole soft spoken gimmick is all the way up his ass in the grass. Ariel immediately begs to be his power bottom every interview. Yeah, this is where Ariel's basically glazing him like completely.
It's the narrative. People just follow the narrative. When I was there battling, when I was in the battle in the position back then, having all this pressure, all this threat, nobody think about like he's a mistake. Then I get free, get in peace, and then he's a mistake. I don't understand. if having peace and peace of mind and be in the best position that you ever think of is a mistake, well then I love mistakes.
So he takes this whole like perspective of like, hey, all these people are creating narratives, carrying narratives. Bro, storylines is what fucking sells. That's what you're not understanding. You are marketable because of these narratives. You are marketable because right now, the reason why you even have value to go on the MVP card, not just because you're a badass fighter, but there's a narrative behind the UFC. There's a narrative behind the whole situation with the fighter pay recently that's coming up, right? And everybody's saying how like the UFC stinks. And dude, I've been a fan for fucking so many years of the UFC since 2019. My first fight was Colby Covington versus Kamaru Usman. That was an incredible fight to me. And now you have everybody basically saying that they're tired of the UFC, that they're tired of all this stuff. And I for the first time in my life, I agree. I agree that the UFC is not as exciting to watch anymore. I used to get so excited with anticipation, like for the next fight coming up on these fight cards, and I would be like super excited when they had like, for example, Stylebender, who's fighting this weekend versus like Sean Strickland. I was super excited for that fight. I didn't think Sean Strickland was gonna win. When the fight plays out, I'm sitting there in awe, looking at like my TV in the third round around my friends, and I'm in awe looking at the TV, being like, "What the fuck is is Sean Strickland about to win the fucking title? Like, this is pinch, like fucking pinch me. This is crazy because DDP had an injury or something, so he couldn't fight for the title against Israel Adesanya. So they called in Sean Strickland, and Stylebender goes, "Hey, Strickland, let's do the man dance, right?" So you have to be marketable. You have to have some sort of. If I hire a salesperson, right, and my sales guy gets me 5 clients, but my other sales guy gets me 2 clients, why the fuck would I not pay the guy who gives me 5 clients more than I pay the guy who gives me 2 clients only? Like, it doesn't make any fucking sense.
I'm really looking forward to make some mistake in the future.
What was it?
Oh, trust me, he's already made a mistake just doing this right now, this interview. So he's already achieved that for himself.
Like hearing Ronda talk about these business, choices and the state of the sport and all that stuff when you've been saying this stuff for the last few years, but to hear it from her, after all this time, I was wondering what you thought of it.
Well, I think not only Ronda, but now in the moment, like I see a lot of people battling and then understanding it in the same position that I was, understanding what I was dealing with at time, which is more excited because people get more aware of like the situation. Back then I was alone, and I hope some people understand at time, not like to join my fight, but even for their own self, because we are watching the landscape today, the situation that are going on today is the same thing that I've been saying all these years, and those people they are facing the same situation, right? But it's at least a good thing that people are aware of it, and that's why I'm trying to like push back all this narrative, because they want to spread out this narrative to scare other fighters that want to claim a better position for them, a better thing, and that's why
Here's a problem, right? That Francis doesn't understand. The UFC brought value to you, which is why you have a name. Ronda Rousey has a name because of the UFC. The UFC is adding value to the people who fight under their promotion. When you have, for example, and even Ben Askren talked about this with DC on one of the recent episodes that they just put out recently. So when you're fighting for a promotion, and you're just not adding any value to the promotion, but the promotion is adding value to you, isn't that a win-lose situation or lose-win situation? Like, I don't think Francis Ngannou understands the perspective of having a win-win relationship. If you can have a win-win relationship with the UFC and make relatively good money, like, why wouldn't any fighter do that? Not to mention, when we had Max Holloway talking about this, and Ariel will bring this up in the future on this interview, but Max Holloway said, John Jones wanted the fight against Francis Ngannou. And then, you get another fighter, basically. Fuck, I don't know why when I do these interviews, for some reason, I can't remember the fighters' names. Derek Lewis, essentially, said, oh, instead of taking whatever, John Jones is asking for, I'll take $1 million to fight Francis Ngannou. So the UFC, if you've been watching it quite recently, they have so many fighters that have no name value at the bottom of the fight cards on these prelims and stuff like that. Before, when people used to watch the prelims, you would know who they are. You would know who every fighter is. I get on these like videos with Colin or Mo, and half the time I'm looking at the prelims or even the main card, and I'm like, I don't even know who this fucking guy is, and he just fought off the Contender Series, and some of these fighters are fighting on the Contender Series, like that happened, and then a couple years roll by, or a year rolls by, and then they fight in the actual organization, the UFC, and you don't know who their name is because you don't remember watching them, because you're watching so many fights every single week, and I'm watching I'm watching one championship PFL, I'm watching the UFC. Obviously, I'm a big fan of the UFC mainly, but we're watching bare knuckle boxing, like we're watching all these different fight promotions, karate combat, all these different fight promotions, and then for us to remember all these names, like it's just I think that's where the UFC is going wrong as well. I think what got them to the dance and got them to the Paramount deal is the fact that they had no named people who had a name value, basically, who were fighting on the fight cards when it was prelims, when it was the main card and stuff like that. What's interesting to me is that you have Zuffa Boxing and Dana White saying he wants to create Zuffa Boxing the way he created the model for the UFC. I think they're going to lose that model with the UFC if they have the PFL and the MVP organization. And I'm not saying that that's not a good thing or a bad thing. I actually think it's a good thing for them to have competition because then they'll have to level up as well. But at the same time, they can't have the best fighting the best if they have people in the MVP at the MVP promotions. If MVP does more than one event, and then they have the PFL as well. So I don't know. This is just a very interesting narrative around everything that's just happening right now in the MMA space. And then on top of that, you have this guy who doesn't understand the game or the bigger picture and just thinks that every fighter individually should get paid a lot more. And I'm not disagreeing with that, by the way. I do think fighters should get paid more, but people often do want to get paid more. And I've had to be on the other side of talking to people who work with me in my marketing agency and be like, okay, you want more pay? Well, I'm gonna need X, Y, and Z from you if you want more pay. So that way you can bring more value to me. Like I've had discussions with people before and I had to understand from their perspective why they feel like they need more pay or whatever the case is. And sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong. And sometimes they overvalue themselves. And so like that is a possibility, right? So yeah.
May have lost him. Yeah, I always do that. It's great. Except for Chris Kevin. Ken is his birth name, and also Junior Dos Santos in karate. I believe he's back. Narrative.
Yes.
So we lost the connection there. You were saying that's why you're pushing back on the narrative.
Yes, because there's planting some narrative out there to like scare fighter. Some fighter must be like, oh, I don't want to leave. I'm not happy here, but I don't want to leave because they are afraid of like what they have done to me or the narrative or that they have spread out there that put pressure on them, you know. But I just want to say like that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You know, if some people are good where they are, that's not a problem. But if you're not good, it's your right. It's your full right for every single fighter, whether doesn't matter the organization. If you're not happy of where you are not happy, and it's your right to get out of it. You know, like we are independent contractor, so that doesn't apply. You're not like an employee that you have to sign up somewhere and work for multiple years. You can sign up somewhere and then fight for, I don't know, 1 fight, 2 fight, whatever is the deal, and then move on. Just decide to move on, to go somewhere else. It's your right. That's
Okay, I disagree with him there too. So if I hire someone who's a contractor, for example, I have a lady who works for me as a graphic designer. She has to give me a 2-week notice according to the contract that we have. Now, if she just decides to leave, then she's breaching the contract because she just decided to leave without any notice. She has to give me notice so I can be able to run my agency and business the way I typically run it. So the contract doesn't just protect her. It doesn't just protect me; it also protects her as well. So this is where I don't think he makes sense. You are an independent contractor. I understand. Now, I'm not saying to her she can't go work anywhere else. Like they can do grappling matches and stuff like that. I understand he wants to go do boxing and he can't do that. Like I think there's a good reason for it. So in that contract, you have specific stuff outlined that you can't do certain things. But for example, my contracts, my people can do freelance work as a contractor. They can't do well, yeah. I mean, I'm not that sophisticated, so they can go work for another agency if they wanted to in the meantime as well, and double dip if they wanted with me as well. But as long as they meet their deadlines, they meet their criteria and everything that I ask for, they're pretty much good to go. But it's basically a similar concept. And I think he's suggesting that you should be able to do whatever you want because you're an independent contractor. That's not necessarily true. If there's a contract in place, there's a contract in place for a reason. Yes, you're contracted to do a job for the UFC as a fighter. You can do things outside, like Eddie Hearn talks about. So the commercial value. Yeah, he could do more of the commercial value stuff outside the UFC to make his name more attractive, to garner more attention and stuff like that. Does that make sense?
how the business is. Because you keep believing that, oh, I'm this, I'm that, but whenever somebody want to cut you, you have no guarantee. So it's something that is very, you need to be more spoken about. And then when I saw Ronda talk about it, yeah, I was actually happy to see that a lot of people started to see, and a lot of people will talk about it, and most people will understand.
Francis, why do you think, if you can still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Why do you think so many fighters are afraid to speak up like you did, to bet on themselves, to take these chances? Why do you feel like that is the case?
Oh, because of depression. Don't you see, since I left, don't you see what they're trying to do? All this blah, 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 all the thing, like all the narrative trying to drive. The mission have always been like to destroy Francis, to damage Francis, you know? By the way, tell me about somebody that have left and then went out and be something, you know, basically as a champion. First of all, nobody have left as a champion.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to close that door, lock all these things. I don't know if it's true. I haven't heard that even the sunset clause doesn't longer exist. I hope it's not true, but
you know, recently they signed, Zuffa Boxing signed Conor Benn to this one fight, $15 million deal. And Dana White was asked about it. And he said, why wouldn't you be happy if you're another fighter? Why wouldn't you be happy to see another fighter make a lot of money? Why wouldn't you be happy for them? Why wouldn't you want to celebrate that? And can I just ask, I thought of you.
They should be happy of making their own money. You know, happiness could also start from your own self. You don't have to always be happy for people. Yes, it's good to be happy from seeing someone make money, but when you're making money too, not when you're going broke, not where you're taking a fight, maybe with injury because you have $100 in your bank account and trying to make a living, provide for your family. Yes, when you see something like that, and then maybe you've been in the organization for all this year doing all this fight, of course you get pissed. I would have get pissed too. I didn't get pissed about that. It didn't bother me because I was in the better position, right? That's no longer my problem. I don't have that kind of problem anymore.
I thought of you when he said that because I remember when he announced at the press conference, Dana White did, that you were leaving the UFC. He didn't say, I'm happy for Francis that he's going to go out there and make more money. When you signed with PFL, he didn't say, I'm happy for Francis, or you should be happy for Francis.
Sorry, just real quick. I think it's kind of weird that like Francis Ngannou makes that whole statement, super emotional about it, super excited and passionate about what he's saying, which is fair to him, right? He feels a certain type of way. He's seen certain things. And obviously I'm not a fighter, so I can't really relate to some of this stuff. But, you know, from the outside looking in, I'm like trying to understand the perspectives that they both have, right? And then he does this fake smile at the end. I just find it weird. That I think that it kind of shows who he is as a character, because it's just a fake smile.
Signed to fight Tyson Fury. He did not say that. He said Francis didn't want the tough fights. Francis didn't want the John Jones fight. And so there's a bit of there's some hypocrisy, I should say, some hypocrisy there. So I wonder if you see this stuff and you feel the same way when you see it.
So Dana White said that he didn't want the tough fights because Dana White offered him the biggest pay of any like heavyweight champions offerings. Francis Ngannou didn't want that because he didn't want to accept it, because he wanted to have his quote unquote freedom to go fight in the boxing matches. Nothing wrong with what Francis wanted, but in the same breath, I don't think that's like hypocritical in that sense. I don't think it makes sense for the line that Ariel's trying to draw between the two. Because when Dana say you should be happy for fighters getting more pay, whether it's like Zuffa Boxing or it's the UFC, they're both under the TKO banner, which means they're going to get more pay. And I think Israel Adesanya also understands this as well. I think Dana White tried to make that point recently in one of his post-fight press conferences, where he said that, actually the same one, where he said, you know, over the past, you know, whatever, 6-7 years, fighter pay has gone up. That means fighter pay is going to go up with these new contracts that they renew with these fighters that they currently have on their roster in current contracts. Now, some fighters have it like different, where, like, for example, Dustin Poirier can negotiate his contracts for every single bout that he has after he had those fights with Conor McGregor. But that's good because he's a special fighter, because he brings a lot of value to the organization in terms of viewership. So he garners a lot of attention. When if Dustin Poirier right now said he's going to come back to MMA and fight, everybody would be super excited. If you look at the numbers that his interview with Joe Rogan got, or his podcast with Joe Rogan got, I mean, a lot of people were like viewing that. He has a big name because of the fights that he had against Conor McGregor and his whole UFC like resume, essentially. So yeah, I would say he's, you know, arguably the uncrowned champ at this point. Dustin Poirier, speaking of. Okay, let's go back into the interview.
Yeah, I mean, I would have still be happy for Conor Benn even if they have gave him 30 million. Meanwhile, other people should have get money too. I mean, there are hundreds of fighters that are out there fighting for the organization, making money for them, and then feel like to be in the position that they feel like they are less of a fighter, less of an athlete, because like this guy just came around and they give him this money, which is an amount that none of them might have never seen. It's like it's frustrating.
I think a lot of people misunderstand what's happening. So if you're a business and you just got this deal with Paramount Plus, right? Now, I don't know exactly how the cadences of that payment being provided when they talk about the 1.1 billion, but from my perspective, they're not getting that up front, right? They're getting that over the 7 years, right? The 7.7 million, so 7.7 billion. Sorry. So with that being said, they have to still position themselves strategically, the UFC, so they can give fighters more and more pay. Like they just did the new contract with Alex Pereira. He's super happy about his contract with the UFC. Um, anyone who's gotten a new contract like Alexander Volkanovski, they're all pretty happy with their new contracts, which means every fighter who's going to get a new contract after the Paramount deal is going to get more pay. And to me, that seems pretty obvious, but I guess common sense is not always common, right?
Hearn continues to say that when the UFC fighters start to see what the boxers in Zuffa Boxing are making, there's going to be a revolt. Do you think that's going to happen?
That's gonna happen if people are, if fighters are aware of the situation. If they don't still get trapped with this story, because they are good of telling story, of making narrative, and then people get trapped into. For example, they will keep telling this guy that they are fighting for like the best event, for this, for legacy, or the blah blah blah. Mm-hmm.
Jon Jones came out and said they offered him $15 million to fight on the White House card. He asked for 30. He was willing to go down, but once he said no to the 15, they said, all right, we're moving on. I know you spoke a little bit about it at the time, but we have new information now. How do you feel about all of this, how it's played out with Jon, who at the time was trying to get the fight with you in 2020? You were trying to get the fight with him, but he was asking for money and they couldn't come to terms back then.
Well, I would say I know the tactic. I know the house tactic, so I'm more to believe what Jon Jones say.
Yeah.
When I see, I can understand. I can read between lines. I know how he works out there.
Yeah, he can read between the lines. He clearly can see the bigger picture, right, bro? The UFC was going to make a lot of money doing the pay-per-view fight between Tom Aspinall before the Paramount deal started and right before the ESPN deal ended. They were going to make a massive amount of money because it was the most anticipated fight of the year of 2025, especially at the beginning of the year. I was really hoping that we would get it. I remember back in January, February, and March, I'm like hoping that we're going to get this Tom Aspinall versus Jon Jones fight, and it never happened. When the UFC offered 30 million, they're gonna fucking sell a fuckload of pay-per-views because when Jon Jones fought Stipe Miocic and had that fight, everybody was chanting Tom Aspinall, Tom Aspinall, Tom Aspinall, right? So that fight between Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall garnered a lot of fucking attention, which obviously makes sense, right? So therefore, they can offer him 30 mil for that fight because they're going to sell a bunch of motherfucking pay-per-views. They're the UFC. They're the elite organization of the MMA industry, so to speak, right? So that makes sense, obviously. Like, I don't understand when people in MMA space and media don't understand stuff like this. That is pretty basic. I just get frustrated listening to people like following, as Francis Ngannou say, narratives that people create and not being able to have that critical thinking skill to understand how things work in general. I think there's two sides to this, right? Obviously, the UFC is an entertainment business. It's also a sport as well. That needs to have some sort of meritocracy, and it's also a business and an entertainment platform as well. So there needs to be a balance for all of that as well. When you listen to Gene Silva talk about him fighting possibly Alexander Volkanovski, he's not wrong. He's making his case for fighting Alexander Volkanovski because he's going to garner more eyeballs. Even if he loses a fight like he did with Diego Lopez, he's going to garner more eyeballs around the fight between him and Alex Volkanovski versus him and Movsar Evloev. So it obviously makes sense for him to promote that fight and promote himself in that fight and taking that fight so he could have the UFC title. It makes the most sense. I mean, it's pretty obvious in my opinion.
And I 100% believe that. I mean, maybe 95% or 98% believe on what Jon Jones said.
Do you think Jon Jones is right in this case? Does he deserve more than that, more than they were offering?
Of course, Jon Jones deserves that. What are you talking about? Jon Jones been in this organization for how long? Jon Jones been a champion since he was 23, I believe.
Yeah.
Which is, what, 15 years or over 15 years? If there's somebody that deserves something nowadays, like just even to pay him tribute, it's Jon Jones. Jon Jones needs to be.
The thing, my issue with this here, and I wanted to let him finish speaking, but I just wanted to interject real quick. My issue with what he's saying here is like, okay, so they offered Francis Ngannou basically one of the biggest contracts, which was about, in my understanding, $8 to $10 million per fight, right? Now they're offering Jon Jones the biggest fight purse, which is $15 million. Is the UFC not giving Jon Jones what he possibly deserves? in this particular case, or at least what they feel like he deserves. And maybe what's happening right now is that there's this effect that I don't know if people notice what happens to fighters, right? So if you look at Colby Covington, right? You look at John Jones, you look at Conor McGregor. They all three got iced out because their contracts are so big. And sometimes what happens is you have your stock go really high for a little bit, and then your stock dips for a bit, and now the UFC still has to pay you a certain amount above that stock value. Why would people want to pay that above the stock value? So the UFC is looking at it from a business perspective, saying, okay, maybe John Jones is worth the 25 million, but first of all, we don't know if he's going to actually show up to the fight because we've canceled, main events for him, and no one underneath that fight card got paid because we had to move the entire thing. And then on top of that, he didn't. He said he's in a fight. We stuck by him. We glazed him for the entire year of 2025 and 2024, talking about John Jones is the GOAT. John Jones is the GOAT. And then on top of that, he decides to pull out and not take the fight between Tom Aspinall. Like there has to be a little bit more perspective, if I'm being honest, in this particular situation. There has to be more perspective.
It paid maybe not only for the fight that he's fighting, but for what he have done for the sport, for where he have taken the sport to. Like, isn't the John that they're out there bragging that he's a GOAT? Man, if the GOAT is not respected, then who should be respected? I worry if the GOAT is being treated like that.
So from the promotion's perspective, why would they be glazing John Jones during that whole time? Because they were working up to that fight with him having the fight with Tom Aspinall. So obviously they're going to glaze John Jones to hype up the fight between him and Tom Aspinall. You don't have a marketing perspective. You don't have a understanding of what attention is, the value of attention. Like Francis Ngannou is just a dud in my opinion. Come on. I mean, I'm getting irritated now. Sorry.
I truly worry if that's how they treat the GOAT. Then those who are not the GOAT, I don't know, whatever they are, well, imagine what they are going through.
You did mention earlier the sunset clause. Now the issue is he signs a long-term deal, I believe before the Surreal fight, which was just 2 fights ago. He'll never get out of that contract. He asks for his release. They're not going to release him, right? Why would they release him?
No. He will not. He will not get out of that.
So
I think the mistake was if he had signed that fight before that contract, as the rumor said before the Syrian gun fight, I think that was a mistake, and then he will most likely not get out
and never fight again as a result.
I don't know. It depends on what they are willing to do and what he's down to do.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie here. That would suck if we were never to ever see John Jones fight again. I mean, I don't care if he doesn't ever fight again. But on a personal level, if I'm John Jones and I want to fight outside the UFC so I can get these one-off fights like Floyd Mayweather, which I think he should have the capability to do. If I were John Jones, honestly, I would eat up that fight contract. I would fight till the last fight he has, finish that contract, and say I'm leaving the UFC, and then I would go and get my money elsewhere from MVP or other big fight promotions that he can get more money from. I mean, it would make sense for him to do that. I don't know if the UFC would obviously allow it or let it happen. But for the most part, I mean, he built his name in the UFC. The reason why John Jones is known as an incredible fighter is because the UFC propped him up to be an incredible fighter. And obviously he won the championship at 23. And I don't agree with Francis Ngannou. Like, if you're not the GOAT, then, I'm worried about the other fighters below that. Because the UFC treats him like that. I don't take that perspective at all because they treat Sean O'Malley pretty good. It's a win-win dynamic for Sean O'Malley and the UFC. Obviously, wouldn't anybody want to get paid more? But if your stock value is not there, then why would anyone want to pay you above the stock value, right? So, yeah.
But potentially might not fight again. There's a lot of people that might not fight again. When I see the scenario, even with Tom Aspinall, I wonder if he will fight again.
So I was just about to ask you, when you see this scenario playing out, clearly Tom feels some sort of way. He's now linked up with Eddie Hearn to represent him. How do you feel about how this story is playing out?
That's actually a really interesting take that Francis had. So I wanted this as well soon. As soon as the announcement was made between Eddie Hearn and Tom Aspinall, that if Tom Aspinall would actually fight again, I feel like Tom Aspinall is, edging towards the same route that Francis Ngannou is going. Now, I think what's going to happen is Tom Aspinall hopefully will fight out his contract, and I don't think they're gonna I don't think he's gonna want to re-sign a new contract. But we'll see what happens then because I don't know if they'll let him fight for the championship with his last fight on the contract, or what they might do is just I don't know. they might have to cut him if he doesn't lose to anybody.
Well, what do you mean? Like, how do I feel? I don't care how it's going out. I think
Are you paying attention to it?
Yeah, of course. Well, I see one guy out there holding his ground, making moves. I think partnering up with Eddie Hearns for him was a good move. That won't please the UFC, but will be good for him.
You said just a moment ago you think maybe he might not fight again. Why do you think that?
Well, because I know he started to know his value, and then Eddie Hearn know the business, and then they don't like when things are like even.
Or maybe he just fights it out and then tests the waters like you did.
He been saying that all this time around.
Yeah, I don't think he meant even. I think he meant fair, and I think he meant to say that they don't like when things are fair in the UFC between the UFC and the fighters. And I think what's happening is that it's just a matter of like point of view and perspective when it comes for the UFC and it comes to the fighters, right? The fighters obviously are always going to think that they're owed more. And like, don't get me wrong, I have clients right now who I think should pay me more, really, to be honest with you, for the work I do. But I signed an agreement with them, made a contract with them that they're going to pay me a certain amount. And when the time comes and it comes to renewing that contract, then I can bring that up, right? And say, hey, you know, can we increase the budget here? So yeah, different perspectives, right?
He's been saying that he want to box.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's the source of his problem or what is it, but he's been saying that all this time around. That have never been a secret.
Is that, I know we're not there yet, but a matchup against someone like Tom, does that interest you?
Come on, bro. You're going on too much hypothetical.
Too many hypotheticals.
Yeah, too many hypothetical. He's saying the contract.
Yeah, I got it.
Like, yeah, he's so far away, like something too far to think of. If he were free, then okay, you can.
I don't know. I think that was a fair question by Ariel Helwani. And I've never really sided with Ariel Helwani in some of his interviews and stuff like that and the way he approaches them. But I think that's a fair question to ask. That would you want to fight Tom Aspinall, or how would you see yourself matching up with Tom Aspinall? Yes, it's a hypothetical. Yes, you probably won't ever have that fight, but it's just interesting to say, interesting to hear. And honestly, again, when it comes down to attention, Francis Ngannou would get more attention just talking about him matching up with the current UFC heavyweight champion. Like, yeah.
Potentially think about it. Like, you don't even know the state of his contract or this or what. I don't go too far.
Saga. I get it.
Yeah, it's a long process.
I do think what you said earlier was very interesting. A few years ago, 2021, 2022, you were kind of on an island by yourself there. And even people, I don't know if you saw Max Holloway say it recently. I want to make sure that you can hear me here. Can you hear me here or no? Yes, you can hear me, yeah?
I can hear you.
Yeah, Max Holloway said recently, like at the time where you were talking about getting more money and the John Jones stuff, and there was Derek Lewis saying, hey, I'll take that fight for $1 million. And that cuts the fighter's legs out when another fighter is saying, hey, I'll do this for even less. And so I feel like now at least there are more fighters who are speaking the same language that you were a few years ago. And so I wondered how you felt about it from afar, seeing you have nothing to do with any of this. You're gone. You're doing your own thing. You seem to be very happy, but just seeing that more people are understanding where you are coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited to see that. I'm very happy to see that people some fighters start to understand the game, their value and the situation. Because at the end of the day, it's not only about like, it's not like joining my goal. It's even for their own self. I'm not happy because that do me any justice. I get my justice and then I'm out of it. But I'm happy that they get all this awareness and more fighters will get that. It's very tough sometimes when you walk around like nowadays, I walk around, I don't think of something that could be a problem. Then you go in the gym, you see this guy, he's hurt, he's fighting. He was fighting with injury. And I'm like, bro, why do you do that? Your rib, you fight with a broken rib. Why do you do that? Say, brother, I have $100 in my account. My wife was pregnant, and then this. Then it's like a shock. I'm like, holy shit. So this is what actually happened out there, So that you kind of like have some empathy for this situation. And then seeing a move that can potentially change something like that for fighters, as a fighter, I mean, you can only be happy and excited about it.
You did mention that you were free as of January.
I see his point there, and I get where he's coming from. And yes, you should have empathy for those type of people and stuff like that who are in that particular situation. But at the end of the day, it's not on the promotion themselves to make sure you're not in that situation. If a promotion had to watch out for every single fighter on their roster and make sure that they're not in that situation, that would be impossible for the promotion to do that. And they wouldn't even have a great promotion and be able to offer what they offer to fighters in that particular case. So I get where Francis Ngannou is coming from an empathetic perspective. Maybe he's seen more than this with just one person or one scenario or situation. But it doesn't mean that the UFC or the promotion in general owes the fighter something because of that. The fighter is the one at the end of the day that understood the risk going into this. His wife is pregnant. That's not their fault that the promotion didn't, for lack of better terms, have sex with his wife and get her pregnant, right? He's the one who did it, the fighter himself. So I could be completely wrong here, but life is not always the easiest path, right? And I think that's just life. I think honestly, I think that's just part of life, and I think that's part of the game, so to speak. And if you look at Sean O'Malley, right? Like before he even had the championship, he was a millionaire because he promoted himself and garnered more attention and had that weekly podcast that he did for almost 5 years straight without missing any week. Like you do have to put a little bit of effort into promoting yourself, if that makes sense.
January from the PFL. Did you talk to the UFC about a return?
No.
Did you reach out or your team reach out? Did anyone reach out? Were you interested in at least seeing, taking the temperature?
We didn't talk. I mean, that was a talk that would be difficult, but which is still been done, but we didn't.
Okay. If the MVP opportunity on Netflix didn't come up, what do you think you would have been doing now? Like where do you think you would have ended up? MMA, boxing? What were you thinking?
Okay. So listen, this is the thing.
Yeah.
And this is what's come with the freedom. I'm not obliged to do anything. I can just sit and wait and see if something happens. If it happens, good. If it doesn't happen, it's still okay. I don't have that pressure anymore. I just want to do what I do because I like it, because I love it. But it's not like an obligation that I have to do. I think I have done enough. And all what I'm doing with now on is just going to be a bonus.
If you never fight again, basically you're set for life, right? Is that fair to say?
I mean, I'm not thinking of not fighting again. I think at some point I will fight. I don't know how long he would take, but I will fight because I want to fight. Yeah, but I'm not worried about the living.
You're 39 now. Have you thought about how long you want to do this for?
Well, I always say the day that I wake up and then think about it or go to the gym and don't feel don't get excited, then that's a call. That's a call out. I move on to something else because I also have a lot of things that I can do after post fighting career that I'm very excited to.
But that hasn't come yet. You don't feel that at all?
No, I don't feel that. I get excited. I go to the gym and then I get excited. I'm into this. This is my thing. I love it. I feel that excitement. Let's do it.
Francis, in November, we spoke when Jake was looking for a replacement for Tank Davis, and they reached out to you about fighting Jake on that Netflix card in boxing. He eventually went with AJ, and you said you weren't all that interested in the offer and in fighting him. How do you feel about being in business with MVP, with Nikisa and Jake now? What is that like for you?
Okay, but that didn't mean that I didn't like them or that I hate them or something, right? I mean,
yeah. It doesn't necessarily mean that you don't like them or you hate them or whatever, but your demeanor and your perspective and your attitude towards them was very different to where it is now. I think what he did is he recognized that he fumbled the bag, quote unquote, caught lying if you look at my last video. And I think he realized that. And then I think he realized that now there's a market out there for him to promote that fight between him and Jake Paul. And now he wants to say, oh, I want to be his ass. Like, bro, come on, dude. Like you underestimated Jake Paul in the beginning for that fight. And then now you're saying that, I mean, he felt basically, he said, quote unquote, disrespectful. He felt like them asking him for that fight, offering that fight to him was, quote unquote, disrespectful. Where is that respect now?
If you have heard me, I always praise them for what they have done. I always praise Jake for what he has done, even for his career to come in from just being a YouTuber to become a legit boxer nowadays, because they speak of him as a boxer, not as a YouTuber anymore, right? So we get along, we get a good conversation and get good opportunity for everyone. It was a good opportunity even for me to be part on this card. So why wouldn't I be happy about? And then we always have a good relationship. Remember, even besides this, Nikisa always praised me and very respectful on everything. So I have no problem doing business with him. I'm even better yet, I'm even happy or excited to do business with him.
You do seem interested in fighting him now. What has changed?
As I said, and I will say to you, first of all, I didn't believe I didn't even believe that was a fight. Secondly, I thought all the blah, blah, blah that he's talking, I think in me, I have a little bit of a, you know, like I want to kick this guy ass, like something.
Well, and you're talking about Jake, right?
Yeah.
So I saw a clip yesterday of him speaking to Sky Sports, and I found it to be very interesting because right now he's promoting your fight. He's promoting the event on May 16th. I wanted to play you the clip of him talking about you and get your reaction, okay?
Okay.
Here it is. Here's Jake Paul yesterday.
Francis Ngannou was talking a lot of smack. I think that's an easy fight for me. I think he's a terrible boxer, and I maybe want to go back up to heavyweight and knock him out like Joshua did, and render him unconscious. And he knows I lasted longer than him against Joshua, and didn't get put out. So I think he maybe wouldn't do the fight because I think deep down he would not want to get embarrassed. So to me, that's a fun one on the list.
Terrible boxer, easy fight, wouldn't want to take the fight. He's your promoter right now, for all intents and purposes. Are you surprised to hear him speak about you like this?
Let's just say he's been Jake. Jake is just being Jake. I don't really know what to say about it. It's been him. He have always been like that.
Okay, this is where I do agree with Francis. Jake is being Jake, and he's just promoting the fight essentially. But he's talking shit essentially the way he typically does. Nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. I could see Francis Ngannou knocking him the fuck out if I'm being completely transparent. Like I really don't see Jake Paul actually winning that fight against Francis Ngannou, if I'm being honest. You know, Jake Paul says, "Oh, he doesn't have a chin, this and that." Yeah, he got knocked out by a good shot from Anthony Joshua. No, you know, I'm not gonna hold back on that. But I don't know. I could see Jake Paul getting sparked the way he did in the Anthony Joshua fight. I think Francis Ngannou could find his chin.
Does it annoy you to hear him talk about you like this?
No. I mean, not like this particular one. I think what annoyed me was mostly back in November, but I know it's just been Jake.
Do you mean the tweets and stuff in November? Like what about? Yeah, what annoyed you about that, or what bothered you about that?
Well, because he keep it pushy and say all this thing, like, which is the same thing that he's saying now. Now I'm used to it, but back then, that was like the first time he was coming out with it.
Are you hoping? Obviously, all goes well May 16th, and then the next fight is against them. Is that what you want?
I don't know. If he what I want, if it happens, okay.
Okay, this is where he's doing the same thing. He's fumbling the bag again, honestly. He's not selling the fight. Bro, you know you and Jake Paul probably fight after this in the boxing. Sell the fucking fight, bro. Like, I think what he's trying to do here is I think he's trying to create negotiation tactics where he's trying to act like he doesn't really want the fight. You just said you want to kick his ass. And I think he's trying to make it seem like he doesn't want the fight, but he does want the fight. And obviously he's just trying to create some like negotiation power for him, I guess. I don't know. Francis Ngannou is a weird man.
Would it be fair to say you're interested in it?
In what? In like beating me up?
In boxing him.
And then, you know, they're just talking about that topic, right? Him fighting Jake Paul. I asked the question, would it be fair to say that you're interested in the fight? Francis Ngannou goes, in what? In what? What the fuck do you think we're talking about, bro? He's asking you about the fucking fight, obviously.
No boxing him, kicking his ass.
So would that mean you'd like to fight him in MMA?
Why? Because I cannot kick his ass in somewhere else rather than MMA?
No.
He just interprets through his own triggers the way he would interpret what Ariel just said. Like Ariel's asking a question, a fair question. We're all wondering, does he want to fight in MMA or does he want to fight him in boxing? And he's suggesting, oh, are you suggesting that I can't fight Jake Paul in boxing and whoop his ass? No, you said you want to kick his ass. Clearly, it sounds like you want to fight him in MMA. Am I stupid to think that or assume that?
Oh, but you know, in boxing's limited. It's just two weapons. In MMA, you could throw him, you could slam him, you could knee him, you could kick him, you could do a lot more. I mean, literally, you can kick his ass in MMA. You can't do that in boxing.
Even in boxing, I can't kick his ass.
Well, you can't actually kick in boxing. I think you'd get disqualified.
Well, when they say kick somebody ass, it's a metaphor. It's not actually kick somebody ass.
Yes, I know. I was just wanting to know if you actually want to literally kick his ass, like beat him up. But I know what you mean. We're getting hung up on that. So you are interested in this?
I want to.
Yes, it sounds like it.
So what the fuck was the runaround between this question? Like, why did Ariel have to ask you this question over and over again and ask in different types of ways so he could get the fucking answer out of you? Do you want to? It's a very like simple fucking question, bro. Francis Ngannou, do you want to fight Jake Paul? You said in the press conference that you wanted to fight Jake Paul when they did the MVP card announcement, and they had you and Jake talking against each other or across from each other and stuff like that. You said you wanted to fight him. You wanted to kick his ass, right? Do you want to kick his ass? Yes. No. Fucking answer the question, bro.
You guys talked about it. You and MVP, you and Nikisa.
No.
No. Do you think this is going to be a thing that lasts, this MVP MMA business? Do you think that they're going to do more than one show?
We don't know. Nobody knows that. They don't know yet. Hopefully he lasts. Hopefully, I think Netflix is the broadcast.
Yep.
Hopefully they like this and then one more. Of course, therefore he will last and everybody will be happy. I think it's a goal for everyone.
How many times do you want to fight this year?
Well, I don't know.
You haven't thought of that. You're just thinking about May 16th.
I have May 16 now. Last year I didn't fight. I have May 16 now. If I have some date in the future, sometime this year, that would be great. If not, we will see what's on the line.
Do you think before it's all said and done, we will see you box again?
Possibly.
Okay.
It's about the opportunity, what shows up.
Sure. And I know you're back in Vegas. It's great to see you at Extreme Couture with Eric and Dewey and the team. And I saw you with Johnny Walker there and some new faces, right? You're working with some new guys over there?
Yeah, with Johnny Walker, Sergey, Spivak, all those guys. Yeah.
Sean Strickland?
Yes.
You work with him? Smaller than you, right?
Yeah, little bit.
But I feel like he would give you some good rounds, Sean. He's a tough guy.
Of course, he's a tough guy.
Yes. Are you excited about this, Francis? Are you feel like a sense of enthusiasm about this opportunity?
About what?
What's coming? Netflix is a big deal.
Bro, you guys are literally talking about this whole fight, and he's got about what? I don't know. I found this interview a little annoying after this entire part, so bear with us.
Well, many people are going to watch this.
Of course, I'm excited about it. Like, yes, didn't I just say that? Didn't I just talk about like, and this is the first one on Netflix.
Yeah.
So, and we are part of it. I mean, it's something that 2 months ago, nobody could have even think of, imagine happened. And now it's happening, like for real. In less than 2 months, it's about to go down.
2 last questions. Do you have any idea? People are wondering, will there be sponsors? Will it be no uniform? You can wear what you want. We haven't seen this in MMA. What can you tell us? What are you hearing as far as what you'll look like when you fight?
No, we can have sponsor. I think we just have to submit the sponsor so they can check.
Okay, this is good. So now fighters can make even more money, right?
Yeah.
So you like the idea behind it all? Because you were a fighter first guy. You were the guy saying you want your opponent to make $2 million. So I don't like that there are no sponsors. I don't like that there's uniform. I think that fighters should be able to make more money based on the platform that they're fighting on.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's and that's something that we have out here. We explicitly talk about this case particularly.
Last question for you, Francis. We talk a lot about the criticism, the critics. I would like to ask you, what would you like to say to the people who have backed you, the people who have stuck with you? We focus a lot on the critics, but we don't talk enough about your supporters. I'm sure you have many of them, whether they're in Cameroon, France, and you feel that support amidst the noise. What would you like to say to the people who continue to back you, whether it's from the UFC to the boxing to PFL to now this?
I don't. Maybe you focus on the critics. I don't focus on the critics.
I focus. When I ask you questions, it's a lot of criticism.
Exactly.
100%.
Exactly.
But I don't want to ask you about that. I want to ask you about the people supporting you.
Okay, because me, I always speak about the people that support me. That's who I follow, because that's the people that support me, whatever I do and whenever I do it. And I'm always grateful for the support. Those are the real supporters. Those are the core of my, those are the motivation. Like sometimes when you train, those are the one that you do one more round, one more step, not to let them down, right? Because they are there. When it does work, they are there. They support you. They send love, everything. Yes, I mean, I'm very grateful and I appreciate their support as always. And we'll keep entertaining them and do my best for them, for my fans.
Well said. And by the way, Francis, I don't know if you know this, but
I'm only focused about them.
Okay.
The critics is you guys. You bring up too much critics, which is not my business. That's why.
Bro, Ariel is not a critic of yours, by the way. First of all, I'm a critic of yours. Bro, Ariel is the dude who, like, the D1 glazer who basically glazed fucking Francis Ngannou and when he left the UFC, and before he even left the UFC, he was the whole guy like in his corner basically saying, Francis this, Francis that, Francis blah 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 blah. Like, bro, no one is. You should be a little bit nicer to Ariel Helwani, in my opinion. I don't know why he's saying like, oh, you the people. He's asking the question. I think there's just a little bit of like. There's a little bit of loss of translation, so to speak, between Francis Ngannou and Ariel Helwani because he doesn't understand that, like, obviously English is not his first language, which I don't blame him. I understand where he's coming from in that perspective, but still, like, come on, bro, like, you're misrepresenting yourself, I think, in this particular situation.
I don't like to talk about interview anymore because everybody critic, they say this, they say that. Who cares about? I don't care.
I didn't ask you a lot about critics in this interview, right? It wasn't so bad.
It was always about, it's not always, but a lot about, like, what do you think about this guy? What do you
Sure, but
think
that's not
about this
critics because you're a smart guy. You've been through it all. So I was curious what your expertise had to say about all of this.
I'm not an expert, though. It's just my opinion.
No, but you've been there. You've lived through it. So that makes you an expert.
Oh, you think so?
I think so. By the way, Francis, I wanted to tell you, you witnessed history a couple weeks ago. You got to see Ronda Rousey and I shake hands for the first time in 10 years backstage. You were the one. You were right there. You witnessed it,
Really?
right? Yeah, that was first time
That
in
was
10 years. 10 years.
Well,
It was nice.
That's a good history because I believe it's not the last time that you guys are shaking hands.
I hope so.
I think in the next 8 weeks, you guys are going to shake hands more than 2 times.
I look forward to that. And I look forward to shaking your hand again in person. It was great to be with you in person.
I don't know, that sounded a little bit patronizing to me. I think you'd have shaken more than 2 times before the like, come on, bro, like, just shut the fuck up.
Because it had been a while as well. Thank you as always, Francis. You're the man. We appreciate
Thank
you.
you.
There it is. Francis Ngannou against Philipe Lins, live on Netflix, only on Netflix, Saturday, May 16th, Intuit Dome, which is a fantastic new arena in Inglewood, California. I can't wait for this, and I'm so happy that you're a part of it, Francis. Thank you for the time. Good luck, bon courage in training, and we'll see you very soon.
Thank you, Ariel, and thank you to my fans, to those who you don't always ask me about them, those who support me always and love me. Thank you, guys.
Au revoir. Thank you, Francis.
Au revoir.
There he is, le prédateur himself, Francis Ngannou.
So, tell me what you think about that. In my take on the fight and the whole interview with Francis Ngannou, I just felt like, in my personal opinion, that Francis Ngannou was kind of a little biased in his perspective of, like, how things are in reality, so to speak. And I just didn't feel like some of his perspectives were correct. I mean, things worked out for him, thank God, right? Like, they worked out for him, but they could have went really the wrong way too. And if you look at it, like, for the most part, it always seems like he's doing really well, and all of a sudden it seems like he's doing really, really low. And he has these, like, bipolar sort of deflections in his, in his career in total, right? He has the fight against Tyson Fury after he leaves the UFC. Then he has the fight against Anthony Joshua, gets knocked out. And then he has the fight against in MMA against that guy. I don't even know. I don't even remember his name. Right? That's how much we knew him. And then he obviously doesn't fight again in the PFL or boxing. And now, he didn't even fight last year. He said it himself. He didn't fight last year at all. So that kind of sucks, right? Like, I think as fans, you want to see your favorite fighters fight more than once a year, if not at least once a year. And I think that's the issue that a lot of fans have with Francis Ngannou. But Francis Ngannou's in peace, so he's happy, fun with it, and he's good. Go ahead and like, subscribe. I'm not gonna really edit this video, to be honest with you. I'm gonna just go ahead and post it. I do not like the fact that this background is coming in my face, but I'm gonna go ahead and post it anyways. And if you guys have any questions, comments, likes, or sorry, if you have any questions, comments, or anything you want to share with me, go ahead and feel free to put that down below in the comment box, and tell me what you thought about the video, what you thought about my perspective and my feedback. I think if you watched the last video I did on Francis Ngannou's interview with Ariel Helwani, I think it's much better than the last one, but I couldn't help myself in some of them. I just had to speak up and really pause it in between them both speaking. So I think I did a little bit better at the first half of that, and the second half I think I did a little bit. I could have improved, but I'll just get better every day and day. And yeah, give me some constructive criticism, and I appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Cheers.